Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Welcome to Rejuvi 45. If you are looking for the place that does things differently than leadership development has done them in the past, then you have come to the right place because this community is all about modern leadership and producing the kinds of results that all of our leaders, all of our businesses and all of our communities really want. So thank you for being here. Before I introduce myself, I'd like to introduce my partner today, Mel McCarthy.
Hi, Reg. Thanks for having me.
This is your second time with us, and it's like I don't think it's going to be the last. We're going to expect a third and a fourth and a tenth, all kinds of things.
Absolutely. Can't wait.
My name is Regina Hepp, and I'm Mel's partner, and work at Rejuvi. And before we go into today's topic, I want to talk a little bit about how I met Mel. And I think it's going to be this lovely way for us to talk about our topic today called Norming Makes Me Stormy. So Rejuvi has this line, we call it the contact at the Rejuvi Venture line, and it's a way for people to reach out to us. And so, of course, we check that line frequently. And we went out there one day and Mel introduced herself to us. And she talked about being struck by some of the things that we communicate out there on Rejuvi 45 in LinkedIn land. And she wanted to become part of the movement. That happened that was in early August, I believe, maybe late July. I don't know for sure, but boy, have we come a long way, Mel. It's just been a fantastic, fast ride with you in 5 months.
Absolutely. Just couldn't imagine a better partnership and really leading the way forward with a fantastic team trying to change the way that people consume leadership in organizations
Mhm.
and how we think about developing leaders in a way that's transparent and helping them see what their progress actually is over time, which isn't always easy to do with the tools that we've had up to this point.
I think that's one of the things. I mean, you and I moved fast and far. We built a relationship very, very quickly. And I think that one of the things that I was so drawn to you about was your commitment to actually making things practical, actionable, different for your customer. Because your customers are leaders, your customers are businesses. And you
100%.
don't want this theoretical, it's not going to make a difference, same old kind of stuff. You're very committed to that group. So I'm continually hearing things out of your mouth called, but what does that mean for the leader? Right. But how do we make that real for the leader? How do we make that real for the business? It's been fantastic.
Great to hear. All I can think about is, when I've been a leader in an organization and faced with a new team or a set of challenges that I haven't faced before, there's really not been a good way for me to understand, other than maybe an employee engagement survey or a 360 tool. It got me a little bit of information about how I was doing, but it was never a really full picture, and often it took way too long for me to get the information to be like really actionable.
Mhm.
And so I just, I think, what got us here with the tools and the way that we've done things in the past is just, we have opportunity to do things really differently going forward. And frankly, the future of work is here. And so we need to step up how we completely address some of these challenges in the workplace, how we help leaders, and how do we use data and insights in a meaningful way for them.
Mhm.
Period. End of story. So, and I
Yeah.
know, I know this is such a topic that you're passionate about, talking about what norming is and why it makes us both storming. So I'd love to hear from you what you think about that. What does it mean when we talk about leadership analytics?
Well, yeah, I think I explained to you that we do 36 unique topics every year at Rejuvi 45, and some of them just tug at my heart, like scooch over tugs at my heart, because it talks about how the modern leadership bench has changed. And there's a lot more people that sit on a leadership bench than we even acknowledge, right? But this particular topic, norming makes me storming, is one that doesn't tug at my heart. It tugs at my emotions. I get mad about what's actually going on inside of the industry. And so, when you talk, you use this thing called norms. And what I want to do is kind of say, well, like here, so if we take a look at what's happening in the industry right now, as in a number of other places, analytics are really hot. Just like you said, data and insights, analytics are really hot. And in our world of modern leadership, and in human resources in general, people analytics are really hot. And then there's a slice of it called leadership analytics that we are changing, at Rejuvi are changing the game on. Well, so I think the question for me is, how are we changing the game? And why am I so mad about it? Like, why do I have so much frustration? And I think it's because I believe in data and analytics, and I believe that you can get to a place where you can be in a space where you are using data to drive your decisions. A phrase that I like to hear a lot, that I've heard a lot, that I like to use is decision-driven analytics. So the question becomes, do we have decision-driven analytics inside of the leadership development space? No, we do not. And I'll tell you what we do have. We have these big old things called norms. And I think what the industry has done right is that we have organizations who are doing a lot of good research and a lot of good thinking and a lot of good synthesis on how do we talk about what good looks like? How do we talk about leadership successfully? And they produce their models, and they produce the attributes that are assigned to those models. And then they go do some assessment work, right? You know this drill. And people get their reports, or they that sort of thing. When they look at their reports, they'll essentially get two things. They'll get some sort of way to kind of size them up. They might get a score or a rating, what have you. But then they'll take that score or that rating and they will relate it to industry norms. Now, I think norms is a healthy thing, right? So now, for example, I know you and your husband, Mike, have two great dogs, right? And so have you had them since they were puppies?
Absolutely. Yep.
Okay. So as you're raising these puppies, understanding how the dogs are growing and behaving according to, I believe, the retrievers, right? Retriever norms is a really good thing. Are they keeping pace, right? Are they about where they should be? Because they're markers to understand, like, are you staying in the guardrails, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
So I think norms are healthy from a guardrail perspective to kind of tell you, am I in the right? Am I on the right highway? But beyond that, I don't know what they do for a leader. And that's what makes me mad, is that we take this attribute level data and we off ramp it to norms. And all that that's really doing is it's filling the coffers of the vendor. Their databases become richer and richer and richer about leadership capability. And now the organization who has a slice of that data represented by the leaders in their organization, they now have to go ask for permission to run reports, right? And what they get back is this normative stuff. And so that for me is why I'm so mad about it. And I think that what's happening now is there's a whole new way to start to think about leadership analytics. And you can start to take this attribute level data. And this time you're not going to off ramp it and only give people normative understanding of how they're doing in relationship to, a given industry. But what you're going to do is you're going to keep that data inside the organization, and you're going to start to do different things in order to create a credible rate of change, or an understanding of how your leadership capability is is changing. Is it contracting? Is it expanding? And what does that contraction and expansion actually mean in relationship to the outcomes that are important to the organization? That's why I am so passionate about this. That's why I am so mad about this, what's been done in the past. And it's also why I'm so like fired up and positive, high on the future, because advanced analytics and emerging technologies allow organizations to push past norms and make real data-driven, decision-driven, now get into the game of decision-driven data because of their leadership analytics. I know that was a mouthful, but oh my gosh, I have like a million things to say about this.
Completely understand. I've been working with a leader who is actually using Rejuvi right now. We're doing a leader assessment for her, and it's been so fun to watch because she is in the driver's seat. She can decide if she's got more people she wants to get input from. She is running that assessment, right? She's going to own that data, and she's going to be able to see how she compares to herself over time, how she is improving, where she needs to aim next or tweak just a little bit to start getting business results. It's not going through a vendor. It's not going through HR. We don't care what's happening globally with how other companies or other leaders, look next to her. She cares about competing with herself and how does she get better? And she's in the driver's seat. It's not a vendor. And that's one of the most fantastic things about Rejuvi.
I love what you're talking about and this is why, I opened the way that I did today and around, I think some of what does this mean for our leaders? Let's make it real for our leaders. And here you go again. You're kind of bringing this experience now with this particular general manager, and she's getting feedback, but she is in the driver's seat, right? She, about what she needs to do better. She's not just understanding how am I compared or contrasted to others inside of my industry. It's just so much more focused on them. It's personal. They get skin in the game, right?
100%. I will contrast that example with another group of leaders that I recently met with to look at some 360-degree assessment results that they had run. And their question to me was, well, what does this column mean about how I stack up against this global average? And the reality is, they're a small manufacturing company. They don't really care what's going on globally or who does something better. It's really about competing with themselves, right? How do they get better over time? And do they own their own data to be able to do that? They're creating their own norm.
Yeah, you can immediately, when you look at normative data, I mean, I'm not saying it's I'm channeling, our data person video thumb ready, but I'm channeling him and saying norms have their place, norms are valuable. But that particular group could look at that column and to say, hey, we're in the game, right? We're in the game. We're bringing it at a level that matches others in our industry, but they have to be able to push beyond that.
Right.
Now,
What's really actionable from that, right? In that particular context.
Yeah. Now we're gonna as we kind of meander through today's topic, so that we're not storming about norming, right? So that we're fired up, about decision-driven leadership analytics. But we'll get to this place where we'll talk about why is that so valuable, right? Why is it so valuable to put a leader in control of their own leadership analytics, and why is it so valuable to a business to be in control of their own leadership analytics? But before we get there, I want you to talk a little bit about what you're passionate about, right? So I'm passionate and I'm so fired up about these doggone norms that we're just stuck in. But you can have leadership analytics that are not norm-based, but are only built on a piece of what modern leadership looks like, right? So, for example, I might be able to work with a leadership assessment tool at some of the great organizations like Korn Ferry or some of the great organizations like Center for Creative Leadership. These are fantastic organizations. And you can get, if you got leadership analytics from them based on some of their assessments, that assessment is going to be focused on attributes of the leader. Now, I know you have something to say about how assessments have changed and that they've gotten more dimensional than they ever have been in the past. What do you have to say about that, Mel?
So this is one of the things, this is the thing that attracted me to watching Rejuvi in the first place. Because Rejuvi looks at layering two models together. It is helping the leader where they are in the type of leader role that they're at, compare themselves to a success profile, right? For the attributes and the skills and what they need to know on the inside to be a really good interpersonal, compassionate people leader.
Mm-hmm.
The other side of this model, the other piece of it is this layer that looks at the organization. And so oftentimes, if you go out into the world and you're looking for executive development or some type of education or cohort program, we are uber focused on helping the person, right, build their EQ and their IQ and all of these good things. We have no idea when they go back to the organization how they impact their piece of the business.
Mm-hmm.
You might get little pieces of that from an employee engagement survey or a 360 feedback type
Or
of
like
survey.
like an acumen tool.
Right. But what it's not doing is it's not showing you, it's not showing that leader, are they structuring work the right way? Are they taking the strategic intent of the organization and making sure that they're focused on planning work for that, as well as midterm, as well as what you need to do to keep the train on the tracks? Do they have a balanced approach to that? There hasn't been a way to effectively say, here's the inside job, right, of how you're showing up as a leader and where you're great and where you need to tweak. And here's also how you're showing up for your organization and where do you need to be maybe a little bit, more fierce with some of your business decisions, or maybe you need better alignment with some of your peers because you can see things are off balance. There hasn't been clarity to this point before Rejuvi to be able to get that kind of data. What a wonderful holistic picture for a leader to say, wow, I've got some things to work on with my team. I need to be a better interpersonal leader. But boy, now I can understand how, if I'm a director, of logistics, I'm seeing my direct impact on the organization and maybe, where I need to tweak some things. And guess what? With Rejuvi, you can run this assessment again and you can get the picture and understand how you are changing over time. And that is kind of a miracle. We haven't done it before.
It's a miracle.
It is. Who doesn't
There's
want that clarity? Who doesn't want that clarity,
well,
right?
there's so much that you're talking about that I want to follow up on. And one of them is you talked about there's the inside job, right? And I love that because it's not just moving past a normative approach to leadership analytics, that slice of people analytics, to a decision driven model, but you got to have the right model. And I love this phrase that you use, the inside job, because your model for how you're trying to produce your leadership analytics should represent something about the leader, the inner side of that human being, and helping them to understand not all the things that are going to make them really fantastic so that they can bring it every single day as a human compassionate leader.
Right.
Just like there's an inside piece, an inner side of leadership, there is an outside piece. There is the outer side of leadership. And it's a way that person actually shows up to run their operational line, to run their center, right? To run their function, to run their business. And the way that I think about it, you don't have as much gray hair as me, but so this goes back a long time. But I know you have had so many opportunities to work with leaders, and leaders in different companies, and you have worked with them in coaching scenarios and in team building scenarios and in classroom scenarios. And Mel, those moments when that those leaders and teams have let you in, there's this really great sense of trust,
Right.
and you're making movement on helping them to improve the inner side of their leadership.
Mhm.
But then whenever that engagement comes to an end, if it's a coaching engagement or maybe it's a classroom thing and it's coming to an end, have you noticed that the way that it used to be, those leaders who you worked really hard to build a trusting relationship with, they get this look on their face like, okay, now I've got to go back to the real world and do my job.
Right.
It's like our content could connect with them emotionally, right? They let it
Mhm.
in, but it didn't really help them to understand, but how do I take this and do a better job of
Mhm.
actually doing the business work of a leadership role? It's been a complete miss.
Right. It's like taking puzzle pieces and separately throwing them at somebody, and they're catching them all, and then they're trying to figure out, what does that puzzle look like? How do I put this together when I get back in the job? And by the
Mhm.
way, are the things that we talked about matching what I need to solve for back in my job at this moment? Right.
Mhm.
And again, it's nothing against how we've tackled this in the past. We've struggled
Mhm.
for a long time to figure out, how do you get people what they need when they need it, and make it actionable and make it measurable, so that we all understand that we're moving the needle forward and that leader is leveling up.
Mhm. Another thing that you said that I think is just really worthwhile that I wanna slow us down about is the idea of a change report, or, a Delta report, because your your leadership analytics no longer have to be norm-based. Your leadership analytics can be based on a better model, a dimensional model, the inner side and the outer side of leadership. But your leadership analytics don't just have to be what I would call point in time analytics. To
Right.
say it's, like if you were working with me, Mal, and you were my leadership coach, you have more options now than to say, here's a point in time understanding of your modern leadership capability. And we now have the ability to take any 2 point in time measurements and create immediate delta analytics, right?
Mhm.
Now, we had some experience with this actually right before Thanksgiving. So, a couple of weeks ago, where we were working with a large organization, and we were introducing their first Delta, we call it the Delta six pack at Rejuvi. And we released the Delta six pack to this group. And um uh we had so many hours with them, to kind of do the playback. But what I found was really interesting was that this group of very senior leaders, we spent the first 30 minutes on talking about the difference between a point in time leadership analytics versus delta analytics. And because that's what we do at Rejuvi, because that's what we have spent our time being able to produce, to give organizations and leaders an ability to produce those things instantaneously inside the platform, we don't think about it as much. But when you introduce Delta Analytics to a group, they have to talk about it, because no longer do they have to understand how would someone describe, or what kind of feedback I'm getting about my leadership capability at this point in time. The conversation becomes now, how has my leadership capability changed? Is it growing in certain places? Is it contracting in certain places? And what do those things actually mean for the goals that I'm going to have for myself tomorrow? It's a game changer. It's totally different.
Right. Right. Especially if you consider an organization, right, would have like a subscription to this platform. They own their data. It's kind of, I always say, we keep your data in a locker for you, right? It has your company name on it.
Love
But
that.
really, it's we get away from this event-based education, this event-based, right? And it's more of a, this is just how you live and breathe and develop your leadership, and it's over time and it's continuous. It's not a
Mhm.
once and done. It's not being something sent by your HR department once a year or twice a year, and you're waiting another, waiting on other business units to do something. I mean, a leader really has the choice to say, I've been working really hard at something for 3 months. I want to see, I want to measure right now. How am I doing? Have I
Mhm.
have I moved? Have I moved the needle? And Reg, share, because I know you mentioned there were a couple of different business units involved in this particular client's experience. What is it that you know to be true about those who were working pretty hard on making the changes and maybe those who weren't?
Well, so I think that there were, I think, three big ahas for me personally, as as someone who has really dedicated my career to this space. And I think the first big aha was something that I just mentioned, which was the um how powerful Delta analytics actually are for a group. But we have never been able to produce them for leaders. And we certainly haven't been able to produce them, efficiently and effectively, right? Right. So we've been able to do this. That was my first thing, and that they needed to kind of process through that. I think the second thing that was a really big learning to me was that there were, several people in this unit who were rock stars in terms of their ability to say, I am totally embracing modern leadership, and I'm going to start to work with all of my unit and to start to run my business in this way. I'm going to start to do my business planning differently. I'm going to start to solve problems differently. And it was amazing to me to start to see the ground that those people started to cover, and just to watch their faces when they were starting to take a look at what happened, because they put all of that work in, and the ground that they covered, and the it's like now you could start to see them going, wait a minute. What I'm now starting to see is that my capacity has gotten bigger, right? I am now covering more ground of modern leadership. My excellence barometer just went up because I have done the hard work of starting to use these modern models of getting things done more compassionately for my people and getting things done more fiercely for my business. So that was a big lesson. And just to watch, to see, I think I mean, it was just like, just the affirmation of like, this adds up to something. And now you just made it real. My growth is no longer subjective. My growth
Mhm.
is objective. So I think that was a lot of fun. And then I think that the third really big lesson from this was, you know, at Rejuvi, we often talk about a leader and his or her leadership capability as a product. It's a product, and those who consume it are consumers. And so we try to create some real ownership, some real skin in the game for leaders to start to think about in a sea of products. How is yours experienced by those around you? And
Right.
are you happy with the texture of it? Are they happy with the texture of it? You know, and so I think that one of the really interesting things that happened was, um, you could start to see the realization that as the collective group of people started to increase their overall capacity, like the overall team grew,
Mhm.
like they grew their leadership capacity, like, for example, by X number of basis points. And the conversation that started to happen was around, what does that also mean in terms of our consumer audience? And my feedback was, sometimes it's a little bit like, and again, I don't know, I don't know much about wine. I missed school that day, I would still, to be quite honest with you, I would have to look up, like, I know one, either red or white, you're supposed to put in the fridge, and one you're not supposed to put in the fridge. And to be honest with you, I would have to look that up to know which is which. So I'm not a wine person, but this is, I think, a really reasonable analogy, is that, you know, with Delta Analytics and with a group's ability to improve their overall capability, of modern leadership, the consumers, the people around them, start to understand the difference between drinking, maybe wine that costs, $5 a box, and maybe costs versus $20 in a bottle, right? Is that they become wiser consumers, and they start to understand, like, oh, wow, this is what really good leadership looks like. This is what really good leadership actually feels like. And so, based on that experience, Mel, I think it's a really great question. I didn't know you were going to ask me that, but it's like a really, really good question about the power of Delta Analytics. It provides a lot of value and a lot of lessons. And one of the most important is that, as your Delta changes, and especially as it grows, the consumers become more wise as to what a really healthy, good experience looks like. So that was just really affirming for me as a leadership practitioner.
Yeah, I can just imagine that. And I think we've also talked about, right. So I will just say, as a practitioner, both in a corporate setting and then as a, executive coach, one of the most challenging things has been that it felt like HR owned leadership, right? And boy, if you worked in HR or any other type of function, it was always like, how do we get leaders to, take more responsibility or for their own development, right? And now it's like, here you go. The leaders can, right? They can run their own assessment. They can continuously strive toward building better capability, better capacity. And as an organization, you have this transparency into, you can see your whole workforce of leaders, either expanding or contracting, and how much capacity they have. So I just think about, for those business owners and CEOs out there who are wondering, how fast can we go with this transformation work that we're trying to do? Or, how do we get innovation really moving in the right direction? And how will I know? And, you can only talk to so many of your people on any given day. And, so to have these types of analytics at an organizational wide view, and be able to help and coach leaders who have very specific data points now to know how they're going to move the needle.
Yeah.
That's revolutionary.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, I'll tell you, oh, sorry, did I interrupt you?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So I'll tell you, I think what else that this does, it's just like, how do we know? And I think that it kind of gets back to this notion of why it's what gets me away from my anger about normie makes me storming, and the beautiful power of modern leadership analytics. Because when you keep the leadership analytics built on a better model for leadership, modern leadership, it's inner side and outer side, like you talked about, and you create the capability to not only do points in time measurement, but you shift to delta capability. So now leaders don't care so much about point in time understanding. You now help them to understand how they're growing, and how they're expanding, and how their leadership is contracting, right? So that's now what they're focused on. Now, you use this word called a locker, right? And so what's happening is the leadership analytics in the Rejuvi platform are taken, those Delta analytics are put into the organization's locker. They are not off-ramped to the coffers of Rejuvi, right? They are not off-ramped to a normative population over here. So why would we do that, right? Why would we do that? Because we want to take that locker of change. We want to take that locker of leadership expansion and leadership contraction. And we want to take that data and we want to start to correlate it and causate it, both, not just one or the other, to the outcomes that are matter to the organization. And I think when organizations say, well, how will we know? Or you talk about using leadership analytics for transformation efforts, or using leadership analytics for innovation efforts, right? Or whatever, wherever there are leadership pains and gains to be made inside the organization, you can now start to correlate it to some of those sorts of things. And I think that a lot of times people start to think of leadership analytics, like we might only be able to relate them to people sorts of things, like how has leadership change related to our turnover, or how is it related to, for example, our engagement rates. But I'm like, no, it's all of the things that are important to your business. Of course, those things like turnover, of course, those things like engagement rate, but it's also about, for example, your operational efficiencies, right? What is your speed to market on innovation? How do you think about solving the speed with which you solve problems for customers, right? It can also be correlated to the things that help you to understand, I think your sustainability over time, like how healthy is your organization? How is this related to revenue growth or market share capture? All of your leadership pieces of expansion, all of your leadership pieces of contraction can be correlated and causated to the outcomes that you care about, because we hold them in a little locker for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's attribute level data that maps directly back to dimensional models of modern leadership, just like you opened up the program with. It's both the inner side and the outer side. Yeah. That's how you make a difference. That's how you know. That's how you know. And I think that's what business leaders have always wanted.
Yep, 100%. It just didn't exist before, but now it's here.
Mm-hmm. So we were trying to think about, we at the end of the programming, we were trying to think about, we always try to think about if we could log into the platform, and show one tool that kind of starts to demonstrate what we've talked about. We thought that the tool would actually, so we're going to do that, and we don't have a ton of time left. We just actually have a couple of minutes, but I just want to go on record with this. I want to log into the platform, and I want to show people one tool, and it's actually called the Leadership Capabilities Playbook. And in reality, what it is, it's a summary. It's a one picture, but it's a summary of, I think, what Mel and I have had to are talking about today. So let me share my screen, and you can see a Zoom screen, I think. I'm like, okay, get out of all that stuff. Okay. And to make things go fast today, and for those of you who are watching us log in for the first time, Mel and I are at the Rejuvi Venture website. This is rejuviventure.com. In the top left, you'll see login. And I actually logged in to make things kind of go faster. You're going to log in and you're going to see the platform. But ultimately, we were opening up a document. I'll go to the first page. It's called the Leadership to Business Impact Analytics, a Modern Leadership Capabilities Playbook. And I think the message, that this, in a very shorthand way to say, is that we understand people analytics is a thing. And that's so cool that people analytics are now helping all leaders, are helping all businesses. There is a special slice of people analytics called leadership analytics. And those leadership analytics are changing the conversation inside of organizations. The conversations no longer have to be about, this is our current score on this particular assessment, And that means then we are compared to this normative database from this vendor, and we're in kind of in this range. The conversation is completely different. And we talk about that. This is your leadership conversation now. This is the kitchen table conversation you can have inside of your organization. And what it says is you now can be in control of your modern leadership credible rate of change, knowing exactly where you're expanding and where you're contracting. And you can feel really confident about taking that change and actually using a set of emerging of advanced analytics to help you understand how those changes actually are impacting the KPIs that are important to you, and to have a lot of confidence about it, right? To know that this is really, really well done. And how that looks in a detailed kind of way is this: to get to credible rate of change, you just have to start with, you kind of it's the whole input column. You have to start with a better model, this dimensional model that you talked about, Mel. It's the inner side of leadership and it's the outer side of leadership. And then what you have to be able to do is you have to easily, efficiently, inexpensively be able to run leadership analytics that give people both point in time understanding of their capability and delta understanding of that capability, because that is going to allow you to get to this credible rate of change. What will you do with that locker of information is you're going to throw it into what Videothon Ready calls the gonculator, right? And this is
Very
where,
technical term, yes.
right, a very technical term, but you need to have, we call correlation and causation pipes, right? You do have to run a lot of really healthy, good, thousands of statistical formulations to order to understand what is the rate of change between, or what is the relationship between our rates of change and the KPIs, no matter what they are, to our organization. And so I know this was a really short demo, but this is a document, this is a tool within the Rejuvi platform. You just log in, you go to resources to go, you can get access to it. It's called a Modern Leadership Capabilities Playbook. And what it's going to tell you, in short, is how has the kitchen table conversation changed? Because it's, you don't have to be, I don't have to be mad anymore, right? I don't have to be angry anymore. I don't have to be storming anymore about normative analytics being the primary piece of information that's getting to our leaders. Nope, it's not the game anymore.
No, not at all. I think to just kind of succinctly share what's different about where we're headed with these types of analytics is mathematically, we can quantify and qualify leadership, right, across an organization, the capacity, the capability in a way that never could be done before. And this isn't us doing anything to people, it's the leaders themselves who are right, who are really benefiting from their own data and getting to watch their own growth over time and owning it. And then from an organizational level, holy cow, I can see what's actually happening in my company. I can see how fast we might be able to make changes, right? Or turn our ship as I grow leaders at all levels, which is something that's a real challenge, right? We know that leadership is a full contact sport, and it's not for the faint of heart. It's a privilege, and anything we can do to help people just continue to level up their leadership, that's what Rejuvi is all about.
Oh my gosh, and that's exactly why you are our partner. And that's exactly why you are here with us on Rejuvi 45. What a fantastic close. It's like about this mathematical certainty, right? It is about
Right.
this wonderful power that can be brought to something that we've never done before. Oh my gosh, thank you, Mel. For those of you who have joined us today, thank you. For those of you watching us on our YouTube channel, thank you. For those of you watching us on our LinkedIn site, thank you so much. We appreciate it. Next time you watch a piece of us, bring a friend and make sure to like us, because again, the future of work has arrived, and modern leadership is our way to navigate it.
Mhm.
We will be back next week, and the topic for next week will be called Right to Expect, and it's all about our businesses, our leaders within, and the people that they're leading have a right to expect something better. So that's what we'll be talking about next week. That'll be on Thursday, December 14th. Again, Mel, always a pleasure. Thank you for being here today. We'll see you next time. And for everyone out there on Rejuvi 45 land, thanks for being here. We'll see you next time.